In this video, we are going to be talking about function hoisting in JavaScript. Let's take a look at some code. On the screen right now, we have a function that we are going to be testing. We have three functions actually that we are going to be trying to see how they get hoisted in JavaScript. The first one is a function declaration, in which a function is declared directly. And the second one is a functional expression in which we assign a function to a variable. And then the last one is an arrow function. In the same way too, it is actually assigned to a variable. So how are these functions going to react when we call them before they are being declared? So let's go with the first one, our function declaration. So we run the code node script. Okay, it's a function declaration works even though we call the function before the function itself is written. We see that the code works, which means function declarations are hoisted in JavaScript. Before we continue, let's look at what hoisting is so we can all have a clarity of what we are talking about in this video. JavaScript hoisting is the process whereby the interpreter appears to move the declaration of functions, variables, classes, or imports to the top of their scope prior to execution of the code. To get a better understanding of this, let's look at it a little bit further. The hoisting is before the code execution phase, which means before your entire code is run, the interpreter takes a look at your code, reads through it, and then it moves the declaration of functions, variables, classes, or imports to the top of their scope. You notice one thing, which is my next point that I want you to notice well. It only hoists declarations, not initializations. For example, let's declare variable x. Variable x is just a declaration of the variable. We need to initialize it by assigning a value to it before we can say we have done initialization. As such, initialization is actually the act of assigning a value to a variable. And when we declare our function, it means we just put the function directly, like function say hi equals to the log. Let's just change this to hi, basically. So this function, all it does is do what? It say hi. We just declare the function directly. And when we assign the function to a variable, the function itself will not get hoisted anymore. In this situation, we are assigning the function say I to what? To our variable x. So when the interpreter reads to the code before the execution takes place, what it does is just look at variable x and takes it to the what? To the top of the scope. It neglects the value of the variable itself. Instead, it assigns a temporary value of undefined to it, which is the default value of variables, until that line of code is reached during the execution phase. It then now goes back and do what? And updates our function by function say hi and saying say hi too. Okay, so let's look at it again. So this is the exact code we have in our code base. But when the interpreter reads this before the code gets executed, it takes this variable x to the top of the scope. Assuming up here we have our scope. Let me just write top of the scope here. So it takes variable x to the top of the scope and assign a value of undefined to it, which is the default value for all variables in JavaScript once they are declared. So when we now get to the execution phase, the code now gets executed line by line. Every time we call x as a function in our code base, we get an error. See this error, type error, x is not a function. Why? Because this our variable x, the line where this variable is actually initialized or assigned the value of function, say hi right here, has not been reached at all in the code base. Let's go up and test a couple of functions to further clarify this. So we have actually worked with this my function one, which is what a function declaration, and we saw that it's properly hoisted. So let's check a function expression here, which is my function 2, in which we are declaring a variable my function 2 and assigning my function to it. Okay, let's run our node script again. Whoa, lots of errors. You see, we are getting our my function 2 is not a function. If we go here and say, okay, why are you telling us our function 2 is not a function? It doesn't make sense. We have the function right here, but like we said earlier, the function 2 right here is being what? Hoisted to the top as a variable, not the function itself. And when a variable is hoisted, it's assigned a default value of undefined. If we go further and log console.log type of my function 2, function 2 itself, and just a string to let us know what we are logging. So let's go back up here, run this code again. You see, we are getting, let me clear the console so that we can see this clearly. Okay, so it's getting undefined as the type of our variable and undefined as what? As its value, which means this variable part is being hoisted. The function is not what? It's not hoisted. If we copy all this console.logs to get the type of the function and then the value of the function itself down below here, let's run a script again. No script. So we see that at the very beginning, we see type of my function 2 is what? Undefined. After the line of the block code is read, after that line of code is read, we notice that what our type of my function 2 becomes what? A function. And then we have the function here as a value of what? My function 2, which means that our function expressions are not what? They are not hoisted. The only part of the expression that's hoisted is actually the variable, and the value of the variable itself is not hoisted. If we do the same with this function below here, comment this out so we'll have, okay, all right, again we'll clear the console so we'll be able to, so we get the same error again. Function 3 is not a function. In essence, it means that both function expression and arrow functions, which is our turn function here, are not actually hoisted. The only part of the code, the expression that is hoisted, is the variable, which is assigned a default value of what? Undefined. I'll leave us with just a little tidbit. Always declare your functions before you use them. And if you have to call a function before it's declared, use a function declaration instead of a function expression or arrow function. Thank you.